Mountains that once killed only the most elite now claim more lives because anyone can reach them. Kilimanjaro sees regular fatalities from altitude sickness. Mount Elbrus records more annual deaths than Everest, yet both promise easy access. Infrastructure has erased the approach, but not human limits. The closer we get to the summit, the narrower the margin for survival becomes. But what really changed the cost of these extreme heights? In the shadows of the 18th century, the idea of reaching a mountain summit belonged to a rare breed. In 1786, two men, Jacques Balmat and Michel Gabriel Paccard, stood atop Mont Blanc for the first time. Their climb was an experiment in survival, not a conquest. They carried iron-tipped staffs and woolen cloaks, their only protection against the cold and wind. There were no maps, no weather reports, and no safety nets. Every step above the tree line was a step into the unknown. Nearly 80 years later, the Matterhorn yielded to Edward Whymper and his team in 1865. The price was immediate. 4 climbers lost their lives during the descent, a stark reminder that success and tragedy often travel together. These early expeditions were not weekend adventures. They demanded months, sometimes years, of preparation. The climbers were scientists, aristocrats, and professional guides, united by a willingness to accept risk on a scale most people could not imagine. Equipment was basic at best: hemp ropes, hobnailed boots, and axes more suited to chopping wood than cutting ice. Food was hard bread and dried meat. The only forecast was the sky above. A sudden storm could erase the tracks of an entire party. Survival depended on caution, patience, and a deep respect for the mountain's moods. For decades, only a handful of attempts were made on the highest peaks each year. Even as late as the early 20th century, the world's tallest mountains saw few visitors. Everest, the ultimate prize, would not be summited until 1953. Expeditions moved slowly, carrying everything on their backs, establishing camps at each new altitude, and waiting out the weather for weeks if necessary. In this era, climbing was a privilege reserved for the determined and the disciplined. The mountain's dangers were obvious, and no one expected an easy passage. Each ascent was a negotiation with nature, where the cost of a mistake was often fatal. The mountain allowed only the most prepared to return. The idea that anyone could simply arrive and climb would have seemed unthinkable. A modern climber can leave sea level in the morning and stand above 4,000 meters by nightfall. On Mauna Kea, a paved road climbs nearly to the summit, rising from ocean air to thin atmosphere in under 2 hours. Mount Elbrus, the highest peak in Europe, offers cable car rides to 3,800 meters, higher than any road in the Alps. Kilimanjaro's popular routes start above 1,800 meters and reach nearly 6,000 meters in less than a week. The path is clear, the ascent is quick, but the body is unchanged. Above 2,500 meters, oxygen pressure drops sharply. By 4,000 meters, up to half of all climbers experience symptoms of acute mountain sickness, including headache, nausea, and dizziness. Above 5,500 meters, the body cannot adapt, cells begin to deteriorate, and every hour spent at altitude comes at a cost. Fitness, youth, or experience offer little protection. The only defense is time, slow ascent, rest, and retreat if symptoms appear. Infrastructure offers shortcuts, but physiology does not. The numbers tell a stark story. Kilimanjaro draws as many as 50,000 climbers a year. On average, 5 to 10 will not return. Most deaths are not caused by falls or storms, but by altitude illness, lungs filling with fluid, or brains swelling against the skull. Mount Elbrus, with its cable cars and snowcats, records more annual fatalities than Everest. In 2024, 18 climbers died on its slopes, many succumbing to hypothermia or pulmonary edema after rapid ascents. Rescue teams on Elbrus respond to hundreds of emergencies each season, their radios crackling with calls for help from above the cable line. Rescue coordinators report that accessible peaks now generate more callouts than technical giants like Everest. On some routes, summit success rates top 60%, but medical evacuations keep rising. The paradox is clear. As the mountains become easier to reach, more people underestimate the risks. The margin for error, once guarded by remoteness and difficulty, has been erased by speed. Above a certain height, the mountain does not care how you arrived. The consequences belong to the climber and to the body's silent clock ticking down in thin air. At 4,000 meters, the body becomes the final judge. High-altitude physicians see the same pattern year after year. Climbers arriving too quickly, ignoring warning signs, and paying the price. Their diagnosis is blunt. The primary danger on accessible mountains is not the slope or the snow. It is the speed of ascent. High-altitude pulmonary edema, fluid flooding the lungs, and high-altitude cerebral edema, brain swelling inside the skull, remain the leading causes of death on non-technical peaks. Both strike without mercy, often in climbers who appear fit and prepared. The medical solution is simple in theory, but hard in practice. Slow down, add rest days, allow the body to adapt, and descend at the first sign of trouble. Studies suggest that up to 80% of altitude-related deaths could be prevented with gradual acclimatization and immediate retreat at the onset of symptoms. Commercial operators see a different reality. For them, access is an achievement, not a threat. They argue that modern guides, better equipment, and rapid rescue options have made the mountains safer than ever. Their answer to risk is not restriction, but refinement. Mandatory health screenings before departure, oxygen saturation checks en route, and flexible itineraries that can be extended if symptoms arise. Many companies now offer detailed briefings on altitude illness, encourage clients to choose longer routes, and train staff to recognize the earliest signs of high-altitude pulmonary edema and high-altitude cerebral edema. Still, the economic reality favors speed. Shorter trips attract more clients, and the pressure to summit quickly remains strong. The debate is sharp. Physicians call for stricter controls and enforced acclimatization. Operators counter with education, screening, and client choice. Both sides agree on one point: infrastructure can bring people higher, but it cannot change what happens inside the body. Above the margin, the mountain's rules apply to everyone. Storms now arrive with little warning. On Mont Blanc, a blue sky can collapse into whiteout in less than an hour, trapping climbers on exposed ridges. In 2014, a single snowstorm on Annapurna killed 43 people across the region, overwhelming rescue teams and leaving policymakers to account for the cost. These are not isolated incidents. Across the world's high peaks, guides and park authorities report safe climbing windows shrinking year by year. Unpredictable weather, once a rare threat, has become a constant variable. Glaciers on Elbrus and Kilimanjaro are retreating, exposing new hazards and forcing route changes. The margin for error narrows as storms grow less predictable and the time between them shortens. Park authorities face impossible choices. In some regions, officials consider stricter permit quotas, mandatory acclimatization days, or proof of previous high-altitude experience. On Mont Blanc, discussions of experience requirements and daily limits have become urgent as fatalities rise with the crowds. Kilimanjaro's managers debate whether to enforce longer minimum itineraries, knowing that each extra day could save lives but might cut tourist numbers. Meanwhile, some governments invest in expanding rescue capacity, more helicopters, better trained teams, faster response times, accepting that more emergencies are simply the price of access. Every policy has consequences. Tighter regulations may protect climbers, but threaten local economies built on tourism. Expanded rescue services save lives but risk normalizing dangerous behavior. The future of these mountains now rests on decisions made far from the summit. As the climate grows more volatile and crowds continue to climb, the question is no longer just who can reach the top, but how society defines responsibility for those who try. Today, more climbers reach high altitudes than ever before, yet the death toll rises, not falls. Accessibility cannot outpace biology. As adventure tourism accelerates, the line between challenge and catastrophe narrows. The mountain's indifference is absolute. Our respect for its limits must be, too.